Hey, welcome everyone into the Wells Tech Garage. Thanks for joining me tonight for this episode of TechConnect. Guys, I'm going to go over the last class where we covered the second part of Toyota and Lexus EVAP emission systems. So if you haven't checked those out, we do have 2 Toyota classes out there on the entire Toyota EVAP system. So we're going to go over just a couple things out of that class tonight that had come up during that live broadcast that I want to share with you guys. So first though, let's start with the t-shirt giveaway, the tech question. The question was, a Toyota intrusive style EVAP system is running through its monitor and testing for leaks. All conditions have been appropriately met. Upon starting the car, the test begins. The PCM opens the VSV for EVAP, or the purge solenoid, but the VPS, or fuel tank pressure sensor, is showing an increase in pressure, not vacuum. What is the most likely cause? And then I gave you guys 4 different options, with A being a faulty fuel tank pressure sensor, B, a physical restriction in the system, C, normal operation, or D, a stuck closed VSV for EVAP, or the purge solenoid. So basically, what it's saying is happening is that we have our intrusive style system. This purple line in the middle is going to represent 0 PSI. We're saying that we start up the vehicle, and our fuel tank pressure sensor, which is going to be in blue, so blue is going to be FTP or VPS, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's increasing on here, even though at some point after the vehicle's been started, we turn on the purge solenoid. So we'll just draw, let's go with a green line here. Let's go right about here. So this is going to be purge on. So I'm just using purge and fuel tank pressure sensor because that's what most of us work with. But this would be the VSV for EVAP turning on. We're seeing an increase in pressure, not in vacuum. Is this normal? Is this a fault in the system? Well, we need to remember, and maybe we need to go back to that first Toyota class where we talked about the intrusive style system. We need to remember how it all functions. We turn the purge solenoid on, but we need to remember that this system has a bypass solenoid, or a gate, in the middle of it between the canister half and the fuel tank half. On an intrusive style Toyota system, the fuel tank itself is going to be a sealed unit before we open up that bypass solenoid. So, that being said, you're driving down the road, there's fuel slosh, the fuel pump is running, the fuel tank pressure sensor is mounted in the fuel tank on the intrusive style system. What's going to happen inside that fuel tank? No matter if the purge is on or not, we're going to build pressure in there until, let's go with orange. We're going to continue to build pressure, building pressure, building pressure, building pressure, until this point, when we open up our bypass. Okay? This is our bypass VSV, or as you can see in this diagram, it's called the VSV for pressure switching valve. Whatever you want to call it, that's what that is called. All right, so when this bypass opens up here, we've now connected our canister to our fuel tank. All right, now we went from having 2 halves to having one entire system. Now our fuel tank pressure sensor is connected to the entire system. Now, depending on the state of the vent solenoid at this point is going to determine what happens here. If our bypass opens and our vent solenoid is open and we're purging still, the purge is still on, we're probably going to drop something like this, and then we may dip a little bit below 0, but this is not going to pull into vacuum because we have an open vent solenoid. The system isn't going to pull into vacuum. But if we have our bypass and our vent closing at the same time, well then what we'll see is we'll see this system pull down into vacuum like so. That's where we're going to be checking our test, okay? So on this system, the PCM opens the purge solenoid right here. Purge is turned on, but our fuel tank pressure sensor is showing an increase in pressure, not vacuum. What is the most likely cause? This, guys, is completely normal. And I apologize for my bad handwriting, but this is going to be C, normal. This is a normal concern. This is a normal condition for these intrusive style systems, okay? So know that if you guys are out there, grab your scan tool, flip the purge solenoid on, close the vent, and you expect to see vacuum building up on the fuel tank pressure sensor, it's not going to happen until you open up that bypass, right? It's not going to function without this bypass being open. You can run the purge on and close the vent all day long. You will still see an increase in pressure on here until this bypass opens. All right, so the answer again was C, normal. A couple of you guys got it right, so I hope you guys are enjoying your new t-shirt or hat. And then if you didn't get it right or you didn't answer the question on this last one, in the next class I'll be asking another question, and good luck on that one. All right, let's get back to what a couple comments that you guys had mentioned in the last class. We'll start with Mike. Mike said he likes the idea of the key off with pump testing more and more. It's quick and seems like it can do multiple testing. We'll find problems more quickly and eliminate the other types of testing. And I agree. I really like these key off testing systems because, again, you're not having these variables such as accelerating up a hill or slamming on the brakes or something like that. Anything that a test is being run while the vehicle's driving, it can be easily interrupted. Chances are if your vehicle's sitting in the garage for 5 hours or sitting outside for 5 hours, it's probably going to be sitting there all night. Chances are your evap system could potentially run every single night unless you're living in Arizona in the middle of summer and it's 110 degrees all day long, because you remember it has to be under 95 degrees Fahrenheit in order for the test to run. So nice comment, Mike. I agree with you. I think these key off systems are great, and also the engine off natural vacuum leak detection like we talked about on the Ford Escape as well. Good systems. All right, then Terry came on. Terry said he did not understand what the donation thing was about, so thanks for the explanation. Was going to send in $1K from my pocket change. By the way, great demo. Terry, I don't know if maybe you got lost in the mail or what happened, but I haven't seen that $1K from your pocket change. I was planning my vacation, man. No, thanks. Thank you guys. I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to say thank you for all of the donations from you guys. We really do appreciate it here. It's not necessary, but we really do appreciate the donations from you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If I missed calling your name out in the broadcast, I apologize. I had a little bit of issues with the comment section during the broadcast. I lost about half of the comments. So I apologize again for that, but guys, I really do appreciate the donations. Thank you. All right, and then we had another comment here from Bryn. Bryn said, can you talk about the fuel level sensor system on the Prius bladder system? And now during the broadcast, I had mixed this up. I thought Bryn was talking about the fuel tank pressure sensor system on the bladder system. Bryn, I apologize for that. Let's go over this bladder system on these Priuses. All right, so let's go ahead and erase this, and let's draw a little bit of artwork. All right, so we're going to go, this will be the bladder. All right, so if you guys remember, this is going to be some really crude drawing, but it should get the point across. All right, we got our, all right, here's our fuel tank. Normal looking fuel tank, right? Until Toyota decided to do something. And I like the first line of service information when talking about the bladder system, so I want to read it verbatim. It says here, the Prius features many systems designed to improve its environmental performance. What a lovely line. It makes you wonder what we're getting into, right? So what we're getting into here is the bladder inside of the tank. The Prius decided to do what? Decided to throw a bladder inside of our tank, right? And you guys saw that in those pictures during the last class. We have this bladder inside of the tank. All right, this bladder can have its issues. Its goal here is to store fuel, so this will all be fuel inside of here, and contract or expand dependent upon the fuel inside of here. Now this bladder is then connected to this auxiliary tank or this sub-tank that is on the side here. All right? Inside of this sub-tank right here, this is where our our fuel pump is going to be. All right, this is our fuel pump. And then also, what's inside of this tank? Well, none other than a fuel level sensor. All right, so we have our bladder that's going to be feeding fuel into our sub tank or auxiliary tank or whatever you want to call it, but there is a small fuel tank connected to our normal tank. So we're going to end up with fuel down inside of here, and that's going to make our fuel level sensor raise or lower depending on the system. Now this sub tank here is also connected back to, ooh, that's bad. Let's draw that a little bit better. The sub tank is also connected back to our evap canister as well. So the vapors that are built up in the sub tank are taken back to the canister as well. So we have a fuel level sender. That's great, right? Except for the fuel that's entering into here changes, right? There's going to be a couple different things that can change this. Well, first of all, this bladder changes size, right? It changes with fuel capacity, but did you also know that it changes during temperature changes? If it's cold out, say it's a really cold day in good old Wisconsin, we're in the negative temps. Now, because this is just a resin bag inside here, it's possible now that your bladder is much smaller. So in your owner's manual, maybe it says that your Prius can hold 13 gallons of fuel. Well, on a really cold day, you might only be able to get 10 gallons of fuel into that thing. The resin bag that the bladder is made out of actually contracts with temperature, and this creates problems for refueling. So this is why the bladder system, or part of the reason why the bladder systems in the Priuses, the gas gauge is known as the gas gauge, all right? You go out onto any Prius forums, they're referring to their gas gauges as the Prius gas gauge. And that's because of the fluctuations in the bladder, the fluctuations in fuel level in here, but then also it's not a direct, the fuel level is not directly sent to the PCM and then sent to the gauge, okay? Like on a lot of vehicles, what are we going to do? We're going to take our fuel level sender, we're going to send it either directly to the instrument panel cluster or directly into the PCM, which will then relay it directly to the cluster. Not on these things. On these, we're going to take our fuel level sender, we're going to combine it with a temperature sensor and then also an inclination sensor. So if this vehicle were leaning down a hill or up a hill, it would change the amount of fuel that were to be coming out of our bladder and into our auxiliary or sub tank. That would then change this. So that is why, again, we're seeing that this is a guess gauge, and that's because it is a calculated value for fuel level, not a direct value from our fuel level sender. So that is the basics of the bladder system guess gauge. If you look anywhere on the internet, just do a quick search of Prius gas gauge, you are going to come across all kinds of people who are very upset that, to the point where in Toyota service information, they actually, in like step 1 in there, they're talking about verifying the customer's complaint. There's a couple little tricks and things that I can share with you guys here. One being the owner has to be adding more than 3 gallons of fuel at a time. 3 gallons or less added to the tank is not going to change the fuel level indicator on the dash. This guy right here needs to notice a significant change in order to ping the PCM for a recalculation of the fuel level. So in order for this guy to respond, we need more than 3 gallons of gas put in our fuel tank in order for our gas gauge or guess gauge to recalculate. All right, now there is a way to force this recalculation. You turn the key off, you pull out the fuse labeled dome for 10 seconds, you reinstall that fuse, turn the key back on, the fuel level should now recalculate, and your it should have moved. Now you can also do one more test. A fuel level indicator like this is just going to be a resistive element, just like anything else. You can do an ohm check on it like you would a normal fuel sender. So if you have 10 tick marks on your guess gauge, so you have your gauge here. All right, you got 10 tick marks on your guess gauge. that's going to be equivalent to roughly between 3 and 36 ohms of resistance across your fuel level sender. You have 9 tick marks on there. You should be reading 36 to 45 ohms of resistance. If you have 8 tick marks on there, you should be reading 45 to 52 ohms of resistance, and so on. So if you're reading a different resistance as to the tick marks on the guess gauge, you're going to want to go ahead and pull that dome lamp fuse out and then have this system recalculate and then re-verify and make sure that your ohm reading of what's inside of this sub-tank is also then matching what is being shown on the dash. If it's not at that point, well then you want to be looking at potentially a new fuel level sender or wiring in between. All right, also, if everything is testing out all right, you know, your ohms are reading out all right, everything seems normal, but your gauge still isn't right, what about a calibration on that level sensor? You know, if the vehicle is side to side or front to back on a hill or something like that, you may need to calibrate that sensor. If it was recalibrated when something was done, when there was service done to the vehicle, and the ground where it was recalibrated wasn't perfectly level, you're going to run into issues in the calculation on here. All right, so recalibrate it on a known good level surface. Now, Prius gas gauges aren't going to be the only thing that we need to be keeping an eye on. Any sort of G sensors, when we get into laser cruise systems, blind spot, those kinds of things where we're starting to use targets on vehicles to perform relearn procedures, we're going to need level, flat surfaces in our shops, okay? So keep that in mind to start looking and eyeing up flat spots in your shop where you can perform these types of relearns, because like something like this, it's going to be crucial for. You got to be on flat level ground in order to perform an accurate reset of the inclination sensor for the good old guess gauge. So Bryn, I hope that answers your question and anybody else that was wondering about the Prius system for their gas gauge. It's got its problems, and the whole bladder system in general has its problems, and I think that's a lot of the reason of why Toyota has gone away from it in their newer vehicles. Is it was a problematic system. I understand that it was, and I quote, designed to improve its environmental performance, but they had some issues with it. All right, so there's just a lot of, let's call it misunderstanding between the technicians and the customers of what exactly was going on with the guess gauge. Then there were complaints of, you know, in the cold weather you can't fit as much fuel in. You don't really know how long you're going to be able to go. You could end up stranded because your vehicle didn't recalculate for fuel, that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these systems. We need to diagnose them, if everything's working right, and then we need to train our customer on how these systems operate. Alrighty? All right, let's get into, I think that's about it for that. Let's just get into real quick the next class, guys. Our next class is going to be on September 7th. That is going to be Thursday, September 7th at 11 a.m. only, all right? We are no longer going to be doing the 2 p.m. Central Time class. It will only be 11 a.m. Central Time, okay? If you guys are watching on the Wells VE channel right now, the channel with the little gray logo, if you're on that channel right now, you're going to have to bump over to our main channel, the Wells Vehicle Electronics channel. That is where our broadcast will go live, all right? We will no longer be putting a live broadcast on the Wells VE channel, okay? You want to grab the Wells Vehicle Electronics channel with the red logo on there, okay? If you're not already a subscriber to that, please subscribe to that one. So on September 7th at 11 a.m., we are going to be going over, finally covering Chrysler evap systems, okay? I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm going to be able to get through all of the Chrysler systems in one class. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how many questions you guys have and how much information and how many different vehicles I'm going to have in here. But we will be covering Chrysler evap, and hopefully I'll be able to get it done in one class. If not, we'll do another back-to-back class on Chrysler, but I don't think that'll happen. I think we can cover it in one. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to be about it for me. We talked about the bladder system and the guess gauge and the Priuses. We talked about the intrusive style and the question for the t-shirt giveaway. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share, follow, all that fun stuff. Check us out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Search for Wells Vehicle Electronics or follow the links that are down below in the description. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me today. Have a great weekend. Don't work too hard. Happy wrenching, everyone. Thank you.